All for Ukraine podcast.
Ukraine trillions in assets. My name is Henry Sternberg, and this is Economy of Trust podcast. Today's topic is all over the news right now, obviously due to President Trump offering to support Ukraine in return for the security of the natural resources. And what's most amazing to me is that Zelensky was asked to sign a deal where he gives 50% of the natural resources of Ukraine as a collateral for whatever America will give us help, which is ridiculous, and ridiculous simply because the $500 billion, as large as it is an amount that is very small compared. It's far from 50% of anything in Ukraine, because the lowest estimate in Ukrainian natural resources is 4 trillion. The high estimate that I've seen is 26 trillion. So today I'd like to talk about those natural resources of Ukraine, what they are and why they're so important, and why there's so much talk about those resources short term and obviously critically important for the long term of Ukraine, and believe it or not, many countries around the world and many industries around the world. So first and foremost, it's a fun fact that Ukraine has pretty much every Mendeleev tables element in its ground, which is obviously fascinating. The problem is nobody really knows how big those deposits are, how much they're worth, and what to do next. And that's important to realize, that Ukraine, even if you disagree with Donald Trump, if you don't like Donald Trump, Ukraine must, as a country, develop those natural resources. And obviously, post-war opportunity is very big to develop not only those natural resources, but also everything around those natural resources, because every quarry to take out lithium or iron ore or anything else out of the ground will provide an opportunity to build a lot of infrastructure around it that will improve people's lives. And for us, what's important here to understand is that Ukraine needs not only the technology to get this out, to find it first of all, to quantify it, but also to get it out. But at the same time, it needs the know-how in addition to technology, because Ukraine has not been very successful is basically getting this stuff out of in the last 34 years of its independence. What's interesting enough about those rare earth metals as well as minerals, they are plentiful in Ukraine. And the key is how to develop it, how to use it for the benefit of Ukrainian people. So to me, the one subject matter that's critical in all of those negotiations, in my view, it is non-negotiable, is that the companies that whatever company from whatever part of the world, it will be awarded to basically develop a particular site. That company must not only develop the site to take out their whatever's in the ground, but also must develop manufacturing capacity in Ukraine in order to create local jobs, which will feed local budgets, will feed the infrastructure development, economy development at the local level. So to me, it is very, very important that all of the policies within Ukrainian government are developed from that angle, meaning that whatever the deal is in terms of financial side of things, the key requirement is the creation of local jobs. And that is a must. And not just jobs that are created during the process of extracting the gas, oil, iron ore, lithium, whatever out of the ground, but the key is what happens afterwards. What happens with that raw material that can be used and is used in many industries? How do we take advantage of it as a country to create additional jobs in Ukraine that will drive the growth of the economy and therefore quality of life for Ukrainian people? But we'll come back to that in the summary. Today, I want to just quickly cover the value has been very much spoken about around the world in the last couple of weeks especially, but it's been talked for years. Remember, Ukraine has a very large also gas and oil reserves as well, in addition to minerals. But let me start about, the biggest assets. Believe it or not, the biggest assets is coal and iron ore. It is estimated it's about 1.9 trillion of that asset is in the ground in Ukraine. Unfortunately, majority of that reserves are actually laying in the area where it's being fought over. It is my true opinion that the part of the reason for the war are those natural assets of Ukraine, in addition to all the political stuff. But the assets are very, very valuable, and unfortunately, not only they're under the currently in the area of the war zone, but more importantly, core as a coal as the source of energy is no longer, so to speak, thought after by sustainable community of the world we live in, which I fully support. Iron ore, on the other hand, is also very big part in Ukraine. Metallurgy industry is one of the bigger ones in Ukraine, always have been, and obviously this industry in particular can be very valuable for Ukraine's reconstruction, as well as being one of the industries that provide a lot of export out of the country, and again, not just raw materials, we should provide the final products made out of iron ore. The other one, obviously, we have another critical and rare earth minerals. Country has 117 out of 120 most widely used minerals and metals, so which is amazing for Ukraine. And an estimate is about another $12 trillion. Again, trillion here, trillion there. We're talking about real money, right? Titanium, one of the most demanded elements right now in the world for many, many industries, especially related to space. It is a roughly right now, country can produce about 7% of world titanium supply, which is a very big number, and nobody really understands the value of it at the moment. But it's definitely, in terms of reserves, is a top 10 in the world, and one of the leading in Europe, if not the leading one. The one that you hear most in the news is lithium. Obviously, lithium is being used in batteries, and it's one of those minerals that's demand is gonna grow much larger. And Europe lithium reserves is basically in Ukraine. It has the third place in terms of reserves of lithium in Europe. It is estimated roughly about 500,000 tons of lithium is in Ukraine. So, and as I said earlier, one of the key components is the natural gas and oil. Believe it or not, early days of Soviet Union, Ukraine was supplying gas to Soviet Union, and estimated is about half a trillion dollars of natural gas and oil. But remember, Ukraine has so much gas deposits in Ukraine that it could actually practically, maybe not fully, replace what Russia used to send to Europe, but it definitely can submit a lot of gas and sell a lot of gas back into European countries as it develops its natural resources. So, and obviously there's a lot of other elements that are available: magnesium, beryllium, gallium, uranium, zirconium, and nickel are also very widely available in Ukraine. So if you look at this richness of the country, you're talking about really an opportunity that should be of big interest to everybody in the world. But the key to this opportunity is approaching it from a very different angle, in my point of view. First and foremost, technology in terms of to extract, sustainability, environmental studies that has to be done all across any one of those deposits. And those environmental studies not only will be able to lead us the way to do this correctly, but what's important is to attract the stakeholders who only going to be basically not only creating these local jobs, but making sure the environment where all of those things to be developed with the latest technologies and the sustainability policies, as well as the future in European Union for the country, it will be critical to make sure it's done correctly. And that takes time. So whenever the discussion goes around developing natural resources of Ukraine, I want everybody to understand this is a long game. Will take years, not only to develop individual sites, but to develop the infrastructure around those sites to extract them, and then always the further infrastructure to create value add in Ukraine using those natural resources. What most importantly and interesting about the discussion of the natural resources of Ukraine from the point of view of Trump, Ukraine can and should, in my view, to use those natural resources as the major bargaining chip to drive economic development to its country. And it should start now, as the peace talks are hopefully already underway in some shape or form. Of course, also will take time. But the conversations with European partners and with American partners, Canadian, Australian, as well as potentially Chinese, is to make sure that all of those resources are used to get the most out of those partners for the country. And again, I'm speaking about technologies, I'm speaking about know-how, I'm speaking about value creation in Ukraine, and I'm also very much speaking about making sure that whatever product will come out as a final product is actually developed in Ukraine. So now, moving on to what Ukraine should do to prepare for that. First and foremost, Ukraine already has a map of its natural resources. To be honest, I've very deeply looked at this in the past, and majority of those reserves and different deposits of different minerals and metals, rare metals, were done, the studies were done in Soviet times. And obviously, pretty much every one of those studies have to be revisited. The good news, the general location of those deposits are well known, and that obviously there's a lot of documentation, old documentation, but a lot of documentation on those deposits from Soviet times. Now, that being said, these municipalities, which our focus is municipal economic development for economy of trust, is very much focused right now of mapping out which jurisdictions have those reserves on their territories. And the reason for that, because obviously municipal organs will play a critical role irrespective if this particular deposit belongs to municipality because it's in its land, or potentially it's part of the federal, so to speak, ownership. But in one way or the other, municipality will be involved in developing those sites. So those municipalities have to plan their strategic development, economic development for the municipality, and economic unions we are creating around those municipalities through adjacent municipalities must now already start putting together this development plans that incorporates development of those sites for where the natural reserves are. And that's very important for the municipality itself, because if the municipality is not ready for the big guys to come in and do a lot of work there, therefore, nobody's going to come in. So the more work the municipality can do now in preparation for that future entry by the big players, the better off the people of that municipality will be, and obviously the better the process will be for the stakeholders that are coming in. And this is, remember, this deal, in order to structure that deal, that's next point I wanted to make today before I end up summarizing this particular podcast, is the point of financing. These particular deals are very difficult to finance. They are structurally difficult to execute because there's so many stakeholders, government, environmentalists, all the different regulations and laws, obviously municipality, local businesses. There's so many people that are impacted by projects of this nature. So the financial structure of that project is also critical to make sure that projects will be successful. In majority of these cases, those projects will definitely require, in my opinion, two things. First of all, it's going to be a public-private partnership projects. Ukraine is novice, and we're going to have a separate podcast on public-private partnerships in Ukraine, but that's going to be the way this will go. The public-private partnership will be most likely with the national government of Ukraine, as well as with local municipality where the project will be happening. That's number one. Number two, each one of those projects will require a very large player with a great deal of experience, know-how, and financial and operational credibility that allows for the rest of the finances to come together. That's the second component. And obviously, the majority of those cases, in addition to those two critical pieces, will be involving dozens of different stakeholders and suppliers of different equipment, technologies, processes, in order to get those things done. So it is not an easy process. It is a process that takes time, and a process that involves a lot of players. In this case, players not only on Ukrainian side, but also players from all over the world based on where the company, the lead of the particular project will be. Those projects will be primarily financed through investments of the leaders of those projects. Those corporations will continue to develop them, as well as a long-term debt, as well as a lot of government incentives from Ukrainian side. But at the same time, Those projects, obviously long-term, can be extremely profitable, especially if you are, as I mentioned earlier, able to extract the rare minerals, rare materials from the ground, and if there's a very short logistic arm, deliver them to the production facilities that then make a product. And that's why it is also important from cost efficiency point of view for those operators to have a production facilities or their customers who buy from the from the quarry, the raw material. Those companies usually are different, the ones that are extracting and the ones that are using it. So obviously the development of industrial park around that particular quarry of particular material would be very critical, because any one material can be used in multiple industries. And in Ukraine, throughout our work, where many locations, municipalities that we work with, mayors we work with, that are very interested in such developments. Unfortunately, as I said, they take time, and we are already starting to work on a couple of them at the conceptual stage, and hopefully we'll have many more that will come into the stage of execution. To summarize today's call, Ukraine is very rich, and Ukraine is critically valuable resources, critical for its future development. Short term, it is my view, as I said earlier in the podcast, it is critical for Ukraine and to use this very strong asset, a very big asset, a very valuable asset, as part of a negotiation with any country, maybe with all of them, to make sure that those assets are used for the benefit of the Ukrainian people, most from, but also used to leverage all of the capital technologies the country needs post-war. At the same time, Ukraine also needs to make sure that the companies that will develop those sites are creating local jobs, not only through the process of extraction of the raw material, but also by creating local jobs, meaning that there's a supply value add after the raw material is extracted. There's a corporation that uses this raw material, that produces the final product for whatever industry. And that will obviously help a lot Ukraine. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Henry Sternberg. This has been Economy Podcast. Today we talked about how rich Ukraine is, its natural resources. Please share this video, and hope to see you next time on my podcast. Thank you. Have a great day.